It's all an illusion, Jim. Jim, I'm struggling today.
Good morning, Andrew Douglas.
I'm
How are
I'm
you?
fasting. I'm fasting for blood work that I have later today.
Mm.
So I don't have my usual brain accelerant.
You gonna find out if you have that bagpipe myelitis?
Exactly.
That was Peter Tosh did a song years ago. Of course, it was years ago. He's been dead for a long time. But he did a song years ago called Reggae Myelitis. That was one of my favorites. It's just all about this diagnosis that he finds out that he has. Oh no, he has reggae myelitis. It's in his blood and his bones.
Dangerous.
It's just he's riddled with it.
Dangerous condition. I
Yeah.
have bagpipe myelitis.
Yeah, you must have
Bagpipeitis.
bagpipe myelitis. So should we look forward to the results of your blood work for a future episode?
Yeah, maybe. Apparently, the trick is to take the results of your blood work and run it through ChatGPT to make sure that it agrees.
Oh, really? I had no
Yeah.
idea. A little while ago, my wife got me one of those DNA kits, and I have all kinds of crabby skepticism about declaring what percentage of a place a person is, mostly because I'm like, yeah, but
Yeah.
when? Because people move around. So I'm
Yeah.
like, if you don't give me a time period with that, it means nothing to me. But that aside, what I did think was exciting, and she knew that I would think this was exciting, is she got the upgrade for traits. So it's just supposed to tell you, do you have cilantro aversion? Does your pee smell funny when you eat asparagus? Stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think that stuff is fun, and there's some things like that you can figure out from blood work that I'd be interested to know.
Yeah. I'm skeptical about giving away my entire genetic code to
I
some
thought about that.
corporation.
I did think
Yeah.
about that for a minute, and then I thought to myself, they might have it already. I don't know.
I don't know. Have to say.
I was disappointed though, Andrew, that I had no measurable percentage of Neanderthal. I was really hoping I'd be like this
mean,
unique specimen.
yeah, Neanderthal is like an entirely different species of
But they
organism,
say
though.
it shows up. They say it shows up in some people, this little bit here and there.
Interesting.
And I was hoping
Interesting.
that I would be like this uniquely caveman modern human, but oh well.
Who knows? What are we even talking about, Jim?
My brain is racing right now trying to figure out a transition. Just where
It's
is the
not.
segue? There's got to be a
I'm not going to be
segue
able to
here
be much help.
somewhere.
I feel like I'm operating at a very lethargic pace here.
Hey, don't worry about it. Tell you what, I'm just going to
We'll
do
wake
this. I'm
up.
going to say hard cut. Here's what we're talking about today. And when I'm thinking about all the things that the dojo can teach me, the things
Yeah.
I've picked up from
Yeah.
you, Andrew Douglas, via this podcast, stuff that my instructors might tell me, etc., it can feel like a lot. I go to strike in my bagpipes and I'm thinking to myself, oh, well, first I better do a quick air tightness check and stuff like that. And then I got to be thinking about, oh, am I blowing tone? Am I in the tone zone? Should I blow a little harder? How's my blowing and squeezing coordination going? What are my fingers doing? It can be a little overwhelming. I guess we've talked before about how that's kind of the unique challenge of bagpipes is that you need to get a lot of stuff onto autopilot so you can focus on something.
Yeah, it's not just overwhelming, but there's an array of exciting potential possibilities at any given time as well.
Oh, that too. You're right.
What are you going to do next?
There's a clever phrase for that. It's something like spoiled for choice isn't quite the thing I'm trying to think of. I know there's another one, but it's when you could do any number of awesome. Sometimes this happens to me on the weekend, Andrew, where it's like, okay, cool, I've got some time. And then the fact that I could do any one of dozens of things basically freezes me in my tracks.
Decision paralysis or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that.
It's all good things, but there's too many of them. I can't pick which one.
Yeah. So what do you do? And then what do you usually end up doing, Jim?
Nothing. That's the sad part.
Or you either do nothing or you do 7 things. You ever notice that?
I halfway do 7 things. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're halfway do 7 things. So I think with bagpiping, that's the same thing, right? Let me give you an example. My bagpipes aren't sounding good today. What am I going to do? And then you've got a variety of potential options that might help you solve the sound of your pipes issue, right? You could season your pipes, change your drone reeds, calibrate your drone reeds. What else could you do? You could change where the drones are tuning on the pin, replace a chanter reed, take off your tape and put new tape on because maybe your tape is slipping around, right?
Right.
Oh, yeah. And then the chanter reed stuff, man, there's just so many examples.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to lick the reed, and then I'm going to pinch the reed, and then I'm going to shave the reed, and then I'm going to put a rubber band on the reed, and then I'm going to sink it, and then I'm going to raise it, and then I'm going to put my fingers on the outside of it just to warm it up, but not pinch it. And then maybe I'll bite it a little bit, and then maybe I'll talk to it a little bit.
Don't forget to stick a small metal object up in there and kind of rattle it around a little.
Yeah. So I think that one of the big mistakes that pipers make is they violate what maybe could, in my mind, I'm almost feeling like it could become another commandment. But certainly we can't have 12. I
That's
think
commandment inflation, Andrew. You can't have commandment inflation.
exactly. Well, nowadays anything's possible. So I think that as bagpipers, we have so many things that we could potentially do. But the problem is, as soon as you do more than one thing at a time, you can't tell if the subsequent consequence or result, you can't tell why that happened, or you can't tell
Yeah.
if it was a result of that thing.
This cloud of activity, these things you do, and maybe it got better, but then it's
Yeah.
like, okay, I guess next time I have to do all these things again.
Yes. And this is something I've changed a lot over the years.
Mm.
For example, I don't lick and pinch my reed or anything anymore, right? Because there's too many things that are potentially changing, and you can learn a lot by not doing those things, right? So one of the things we were talking about in a recent episode, depending on the order we put these out, is we were talking about the hygrometer. If I don't pinch or lick or change my reed in any way, right? And if I just play my pipes and if I keep my routine the same, that's what sort of allowed me to take the thing on my hygrometer as the thing that might be changing from day to day. And so everything's the same today as it was yesterday, but suddenly my high G is sharp. Well, the only single thing here that I've noticed that's changed is the temperature isn't 70 degrees, it's 66 degrees in here. And then that gets you thinking like, okay, maybe the temperature is causing my high G to sound crazy when I first get my pipes out. One of the other things you'll notice, or that I've noticed, maybe you wouldn't notice it. Who knows? Maybe I'm the thing, right? Maybe I'm the variable. But yeah, so we're sort of finding the things that are variable here. And if there's too many variables, you're never going to find it.
That's the experience early on with bagpiping for all of us, right? That's part of the challenge, that hump you have to get over when you transition on to the full pipes, is that there's so many things coming at you.
Yeah.
Especially that first time that you go home with your pipes, you don't have the instructor there with you anymore. You want to play, you try to, and you don't, like, where do I start? Which things should I try to tackle first?
Yeah.
So do you ever get to a point where it's really easy, like you have clean categories for everything, or do you feel like you're continually parsing apart what could be the cause, what could be the improvement? Is that one of those it's going to go on forever kind of experiences?
I think so, yeah, because there are so many variables. It's always going to go on forever. But I do think you can sort of, the more organized you are, you can sort of break things down into what are the causes and effects of different things that you do. So yeah, one thing at a time.
One thing that comes to my mind right now, Andrew Douglas, is that I recently experimented with taping down the tone holes. Are they called tone holes? The non-tone holes? The
Sure.
extra holes?
Yeah, I like the tone holes. I think
Below
that's
low G?
Yeah.
Yeah. I experimented with taping some of those down a little bit because I wanted to get a low F sharp instead of a G to be able to play Bridget Campbell's awesome tune, The Badger and the Weasel. Which tune is which? I can't remember now. But really cool set. So I wanted to try that. And I was like, oh, well, that's fun. But then I realized that, like, when I played low A, my low A was sharp. And I was like, well, I was not expecting that. That's weird. And the internet informed me that that is actually a known effect of putting tape on those lower holes. It makes your low A go sharp. I didn't know that. I'd never experimented. I didn't know. So now I know this one thing. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And that's not likely to come up a ton where I'd be like, why is my low A sharp? Oh, because there's tape down there. That's not likely to happen by accident. But it does make me think about how other people have figured a lot of these things out.
Sure.
And there's definitely a process of self-discovery in a way, but also there are resources that can help me to figure out which is a likely one thing cause for this thing that's going on with my bagpipes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I'll give you one that happened to me yesterday, and it's happened to me actually several times. So I'm starting to actually learn, but one of the things I've got going on right now, so I'm going to Germany tomorrow, I'm going to play with Inverary, but don't tell anyone. No, just kidding. I think it's probably fine this time of year. I've got my cane tenor drone reeds going, but I just have old faithful synthetic bass drone reed going. It's just like, I'm not going to try and get a new cane bass going in like the middle of New York winter. Okay. Not going to do it.
Only to then travel and try to have it play elsewhere too.
Yeah. And it's wild, but it's way easier to get cane going like in normal circumstances. And it's still a bit dry here. It says 35% humidity here, which is actually coming up. Not bad. I'm definitely not going to complain. It can get down as low as 10 or 8 during the winters, and that can be crazy.
It is super low.
But anyway, I've got the cane tenors going. And normally, under normal conditions, what you would do is you'd play for a bit, and then you'd set the pipes down so that the moisture that you put in the instrument can kind of soak into the reeds and things can get acclimatized and soak in and stuff like that. But what's happening right now, because of the dryness in the space, is that the air is actually sucking moisture out of the reeds when I set the pipes down.
Like actively.
Yeah. And you might be asking, how do I know this? Okay. And what's very interesting is that because I have a synthetic bass drone reed in that doesn't really soak in moisture and is known to be pretty much always the same, I can see what my drones do relative to the bass, giving me really key information. So as I play, I keep bringing the drones down because they're opening up. The reeds open up due to the moisture. That's something that we sort of ascertained over the years. As the moisture sets in, the reeds open up, right? And so we bring the reeds down because as they open up, the reeds get flatter. So to compensate, the drones have to get sharper. So you're bringing the drones down, the cane relative, and meanwhile, the bass can kind of more or less stay the same. So relative to the bass, the cane tenors keep going down as you play. Eventually they settle out. But, you know, in the beginning, they keep going down. And you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, this is expected. Moisture's coming into the reeds. They're going to open up a little bit on me. This is the thing. And then yesterday, let's just say a certain thing happened to me, Jim. And it's a certain thing I'm sure happens to a lot of people. But anyway, I had the need to set down my pipes for a few minutes.
Sure. So
normally in the summertime, let's say you set the pipes down for a few minutes. When you come back, they're going to be more stable. They're going to be like, maybe they even opened up a little bit. Just the pipes tend to sound good and things are going good. Now, when I got back about, let's say 5 to 10 minutes later, Jim, when I got back, I was playing and they weren't quite right. And I had a funny feeling. I was like, I have a funny feeling that my pipes have actually dried out instead of had a chance to soak moisture in. And then I was actually able to test that against my bass. I was just like, I bet you if I move the drone up, it's going to come into the bass. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. And I opened up the middle tenor and I did the same thing again. And that would only be possible if everything was the same each day and I was changing very little. And here, the variable that I was interested in was the dryness of the air. That was the thing that was different than what you would normally expect.
There's two things that are there, Andrew, that are aspirationally interesting to me, right? That get me excited that I want to be the kind of piper who like is so aware of my instrument, so like intimately connected to it, that like when things happen, I have a really good guess at what's going on. One of them is that you can only have been making those kinds of deductions because those kinds of deductions you were making are built on other, maybe simpler, more basic deductions that you'd already accepted as like established fact.
That's right.
And those are built on others, I'm sure, and others, et cetera. So that's one thing that stands out. And the other is the daily play thing. Because if, as I often do, if I'm going a couple weeks between playing, that's not frequently enough to notice things consistently and go, oh, no, that's a little different. It's like every time is a whole new, everything's a struggle.
Yes, exactly.
It makes me think of, I don't know if you're familiar with the band Brother out of Australia. Really cool band that has some bagpipes in it. And Angus, the bagpiper, or maybe they had more than one bagpiper at some point, but Angus of Brother, when I watch him play, he just strikes me as someone who is intimately connected to their instrument. And I've always aspired to be that myself. I never achieved it, but I'd like to pursue it.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. It's not so much playing every day. Maybe that's important, although it probably really helps, right? Because the longer that you go between playing, the more things probably have changed just due to randomness. So the closer together, the better. But it's not necessarily that you play every day. I think it's that you establish a routine and a way of doing things that's always the same. And you're not just doing wild and crazy things.
I can see how some of the advice that comes up in the commandments can be helpful for that, including like having a consistent space where you play. Just kind of like reduce variables as much as possible.
That's right. As soon as you move from one space to another, that's a changed variable. So you should do that, but that would be the variable that you would change, right? So for example, okay, I'm going to move to a new space. I want to play outside today instead of inside. And that's cool. But make sure that's the only thing that you change about your playing routine so that you can sort of start to make observations and collect any sort of interesting information that comes as a result of changing environment.
Another thing that comes to mind as a point in favor of doing only one thing at a time, Andrew, is that I love the idea of calibrating my drone reads. Like that's kind of been a revolutionary thing for me in recent years. It really makes a big difference. At least I feel like it sure does.
Yes, it does.
But I've more than once gone to play, maybe it's been a while, and been like, oh, wow, I really need to calibrate these drone reads, and got started calibrating and then felt like, oh, shoot, I don't have time for this. Get kind of halfway through the process and then have to put my pipes down or just rush it and not really do it well.
Yeah.
And just changing only one thing at a time makes it more likely that I'll be able to complete that change, at least for that day.
Mhm.
Whereas if I'm trying to do 3 or 4 things at a time, I might not quite get any of them done done as a thing ever is, right?
Yes, exactly. Calibration is a good one, right? It helps to just calibrate one drone read at a time rather than doing all 3 or anything like that. So it would be cool to calibrate one drone at a time and take things one step at a time to get things to really match in, to keep those variables at minimum. For example, you wouldn't want to calibrate 2 of your drone reads inside and then go outside and calibrate the third one.
Right.
It's like you're introducing changes and difficulties and so on, right? Can we talk about learning the bagpipes, Jim?
Yeah, for sure.
Let's talk about learning the bagpipes, right?
Let's talk about that.
As someone learning the bagpipes, and then even more importantly, someone teaching someone to learn the bagpipes, one of the most important things that we want to try to do is one thing at a time.
Yeah, try to help avoid that overwhelm.
Yeah, it's so important. And I've been thinking a lot about that sort of thing, but it's one of the reasons why I'll usually start a beginner on just the left hand now.
Yeah.
Right? Because starting them on both hands, that's just introduction of so many more variables. It's so many more holes that you have to figure out how to cover in order to get the low sound. So if we can get used to covering basic holes on the high hand first, that would be even better. And then you could even break that down further. So what I did with my kids and some of my other beginners, it's like, let's just start with the thumb, right? And just cover and uncover one hole with your thumb. That's one thing. Anybody can do that. For some reason, kids think that's awesome. Maybe because it kind of is awesome. And then it's kind of like, all right, let's leave our thumb on the hole and let's do this one next. We can do these things one thing at a time, right? And we're not asking someone to get a low G too soon because that's a lot of variables. And it's worth sort of building through it to see how we got there anyway.
I'm not pretending like I'm wise or anything like that, but with my 2 oldest kids...
You're wise, Jim. You're wise.
I'm a little bit wisdomous, perhaps. I don't know about that, but...
You're wearing a shirt with a Sam Squatch playing the bass drum.
Yeah. I think that's supposed to be George Harrison.
Oh, it is? Oh, it looks like a Sasquatch to me.
I could totally see what you mean. It's supposed to be the Beatles walking across Abbey Road.
Yeah.
But that's a really good idea. That'll be future
Regardless,
design.
It's indicative of wisdom.
Yeah. Well, with my oldest 2 kids, I got them child-sized practice chanters a couple of years ago when they were younger than they are now. And kind of did what you're talking about, where as we were just working on the top hand because it takes so much to cover up all the way down to a low G. But we cut it in half, where once they kind of had the top hand, they were pretty comfortable with it. We actually put little pieces of tape over all the top hand holes so that they could focus on the bottom holes. Actually, we taped up most of the bottom hand too, and then would just take a piece of tape off basically every week. Just so that if their top hand fingers were a little bit off and they were trying to think about B to A, it was one less thing to worry about, basically.
Yeah, I like that.
Because they were close.
One thing at a time, yeah. And those are the things we want to try and keep it as one thing at a time as possible. When you're transitioning to the bagpipes, right? So you've got your practice chanter, you got a couple tunes down, you're ready to transition to the bagpipes. How should we do it? Well, the hugest mistake ever would be to give someone a bagpipe and ask them to do several things at once.
Play Scotland the Brave with all the embellishments.
Yeah, it's going to go badly. What should you do instead? How about we cork everything on the bagpipe up?
Just try to inflate it.
Inflate the bag and put it under your arm. Just get used to holding the instrument first. I never did that. But like that would have been a nice thing to do, right? Adjust the blowpipe length, get things the way that you want. Practice maybe some strike-in motions, right?
That's such a good idea.
The ready position, right? Like we let's do some of that stuff first. And then it's like, okay, I got that. And then what might you do next? What's the simplest possible next single action you could do? That's what you should be thinking about. So let's open one tenor drone, okay? And let's just keep that guy going.
Yeah.
And then the next thing would be Introduce a chanter? No, I don't think so. That's the most complicated of the four things, right? So that's probably coming last, probably. Maybe
Yeah.
not necessarily. Let's get one drone going. Let's get another drone going. How about practicing some basic tuning stuff at that stage before things get too complicated? Cool. And then we can add things in one at a time. Building on a foundation that you're coming from, that you're confident.
Yeah. I
You know
can
what I'm saying?
imagine even maybe introducing successive drones and then going back to just one when it's, or going back to none when it's time to
Going back
introduce
to
the
none.
chanter.
Probably, yeah. But
It's,
then by that point, by the time you introduce the chanter, you have enough experience and you're building on things.
yeah. I feel really silly about this now, Andrew. It occurred to me years ago that when students were first inflating their bagpipes, they maybe didn't know what the bag should feel like under their arm, because of course they've never done this before. And it seemed like they were so often way underinflated, because it's like you just
Yes.
end up thinking mouth to chanter, and so you just kind of blow through the bag instead of inflating the bag.
You also think minimally viable pressure instead of optimal
Mm,
pressure.
yeah. And so I got an oblong pillow and overstuffed it so it would feel kind of like a properly inflated bag. And before they started playing, I'd have them put that under their arm and say, "This is the feeling you're going for," which is an imperfect representation of the feeling they're going for, right? So it really wasn't great. And I'm kicking myself now. I'm like, how obvious. Why didn't I just have them cork off everything and blow up an actual set of pipes?
Yeah.
It would have been way better.
Yeah, that's right.
I
Yeah,
went through a lot of trouble to have a not great solution.
for sure. All right. Let's talk about one of the most important applications of the one thing at a time,
Yeah.
which is learning tunes, Jim.
Oh, okay. Yes.
The way most of us learn tunes in the world is the definition of the exact opposite of what I'm talking about.
Yeah. It's everything, everywhere, all at once.
Everything, everywhere, all at once. And it's no wonder that things don't often end well for us when we do that.
Yeah.
The tune's impossible to memorize. We're making
Mhm.
mistakes on the field. When we get nervous, everything falls apart. When we try and get it onto the bagpipes, everything falls apart.
Yeah.
Everything's always sloppy.
Do you think that's part of why even when we think we're done with a tune, we could be so off with something like basic rhythm is that we never took the time to just do that one thing? So
I
we've
would
kind
think
of been
so.
skipping past it basically over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so.
Hmm.
And then there's one great way to prove me wrong, Jim, which is to
Mm.
try this for a while. But yeah, what's the absolute simplest element of the tune that you're trying to learn? And I suppose you could get intellectual about this, but I think the absolute simplest thing you can do with the tune that you're trying to learn is to just listen to that tune a lot.
Yeah. But it's so helpful. If you take the time to do that,
Yeah.
it can help so much.
So start with that. That's the easiest possible thing you can do. If your pipe major asks you to learn a tune, the correct thing you should do is to say, no, I will not be learning that tune until you provide me with not just sheet music, but also a recording of that tune. And it doesn't even have to be the pipe major that's recorded it, but I need a recording of that because I want to listen to that tune and I want to get to know that tune. That's step one. It's so easy. You don't even have to know how to play bagpipes to do that one.
Can I get you to give me a sub bullet point for step one, Andrew? Because I think it's an anxiety that does come up for some of us, is we might think to ourselves like, oh, it'd be really helpful to listen to this tune. But if we're learning a very specific setting of that tune, then we might think to ourselves, but I can only listen to renditions of this tune that match the setting that I'm trying to learn. If I listen to the way other bands have done it, other pipers have done it, even like some songs exist for vocalists or guitars or something like that, right?
Yeah.
If I listen to that stuff, it'll muddy the waters in my head. I must only listen to this setting. What do you think? Is that different from person to person, or is that good, or is that bad? Should we hear variations, or what do you think?
Well, let's say you're trying to learn Hamlet. Does it matter what version of Hamlet you listen to?
Well, I guess
By the way,
if I'm trying to memorize
smart.
the script, then I probably still want to hear those exact words in that order, even if
Yeah,
inflection
but
is
you're
different
not
from
trying to
actor to
memorize the
actor.
script. Like, what is valuable? If you're going to try and be in the play Hamlet, what is the thing that's valuable here? Your understanding of Hamlet, your experience with it, what it means to you. That's the important thing. Like, it's not Lion King Hamlet.
I've heard that.
Yeah. So, like, the fact that you're familiar with the Lion King is probably going to help you play one of the roles in Hamlet. So, look, if you're trying to learn the Hamlet, right, you actually, the more Hamlets you can have exposure to, the better off you'll be, right? So
Mm.
you're right. People do have this paranoia about the setting of the tune, and it's like, oh, so-and-so is playing a slightly different setting. I don't want anything to do with it, right? But that's not really what it is.
Mm.
We want to just get familiar with the tune, and if there's a different setting, then there's a different setting. As a matter of fact, sometimes you'll hear something from a different source and they're playing a different setting, but that performance really inspires you,
Mm.
right? And so you can bring those influences forward towards your exact setting of the tune or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
So don't worry about that at all. I mean, we haven't even started learning the tune yet, right? But the simplest thing you can do is just start to get familiar with the tune.
So no reason to not just start Googling and looking around on YouTube, find
Yeah.
every rendition of that tune you can and soak it up.
You'd be like, oh, what? No way. Bob Dylan sang this tune? Oh,
Yeah,
man.
that's years ago in Garden Valley Pipe Band, we were playing The Wearing of the Green for something, and I didn't know until then that Judy Garland once did a recording of
Oh,
that
yeah.
song. I remember
You
coming
were telling me
across
about that. I mean, I haven't heard that, but that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Is listening to Judy Garland singing Wearing of the Green gonna harm you in the process of learning that tune? No way. It's gonna
It-
fire you up. You're gonna be excited to play that melody.
It helped me to remember the difference between The Wearing of the Green and, is it Barren Rocks that goes da 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 da.
No, that's Green Hills.
That's Green
Yeah,
Hills.
it's
That's right.
similar to Green Hills, isn't it?
Yeah, and I had a real
Yeah.
hard time.
No, that's Rowan Tree. Da, 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 da,
Oh, it is. You're right. Rowan Tree. Man, that parade repertoire, those songs, you could scramble up all the titles and I would just believe you at this point. It's listening for the first 4 bars. That's all
Yeah,
I'm
but
doing.
anyway, one thing at a time. We're going to listen
Yeah.
to the tune. We're going to get familiar. That sounds good. The next thing you might do is just start tapping your foot to a recording of the tune.
Mm.
And then maybe next you could go for the basic groove of the tune, which is a little bit more complex. But notice how I'm just doing little incremental steps.
Mhm.
And then soon we'll get into just the rhythm, the monotone rhythm. And after the basic rhythm's going, you might start doing some of the more complex stuff. Like sometimes there's little complexities in the rhythm that are worth thinking about, but maybe not. But then once we have the rhythm down, what would you do next? I wouldn't even start playing it yet.
Mm.
I
Start
might
humming
start
it maybe? Humming it and
or
singing it?
humming it. Yeah. So I've got the rhythm down, and now I can go something like that. Might just start humming it. And then once you've got that, you're off to the races, right? Then
Yeah.
it's like, okay, now I just have to basically wiggle my fingers to go with the humming. So we got the basic melody notes and some of those basic grace notes. That would be the next layer. And then I think one of the most important things for me as a teacher is once you have the basic melody down on the practice chanter, you don't add in all the embellishments. So annoying. Don't do
A
that.
lot.
Instead, you add in one type of embellishment at a time. So maybe
Sure.
maybe we start with the D throats because those are going to be the most tricky. So you start with that. Right? Once those are great, then you can add in a couple more things and add in a couple more things, just like the composer of the tune probably did.
Yeah.
Maybe not so much for Wearing of the Green, but when you compose a tune, you have an idea how it might go. And then as you're playing it and workshopping it, you're adding in little potential embellishments until you find the right combination. It's the same. You should learn the tune the same way. Add in a few D throws or stick that burl at the end of the part. And then when you see those low hanging fruit, you add those in one thing at a time, Jim.
Yeah. So this applies to everything then. It applies to my practice time, my instrument maintenance and
Yes.
improvement, my
Yeah.
tune learning.
Yeah.
What does this not apply to? Is there anything?
I don't
So
know.
it seems to apply to everything.
It seems to be the secret. And then the consequence of trying to do too many things at once is you're never building on anything. It's like you couldn't save for retirement all at once. It doesn't work. You wouldn't get any of the benefit of compounding interest if you did that.
I see what you
Right.
mean. Yeah. Compounding
So, like,
interest. That's interesting
yeah.
to think about.
One thing at a time is how you cumulatively build things up and you snowball what you're capable of.
It can be exciting. It can also be, kind of want to say discouraging. I don't know if that's quite the right word. That like sometimes we see other pipers, like me talking about Angus from Brother, for example, that from where I am, what I'm seeing is someone who is developed in their playing. And I
By the
want
way,
to be
noise
there.
is what all the cool people say.
Noise. Yeah, that's
Noise.
right. But I want to be there, and I want to be there right now.
Yeah.
And that can be part of the drive to do more than one thing at a time. It's like, I just want to
Yeah.
get there. I don't
How's
have
that gonna go?
patience. Yeah, I'm never going to get there that way.
Yeah. When you're learning to ride a bike, like you want to be Evil Knievel, ride down the hill and do flips and all that stuff. It's like, how's that going to go if you try that right now?
Right.
I think one of the problems with bagpiping is like there's no physical harm that comes to you by biting off way more than you can chew.
Hmm.
And if anything, there's an artificial cultural placeholder you can steal by rushing. Like, let me just buy all of the uniform parts and just slam, bam, quickly whip this thing off out of the green book or whatever. And then now I'm a piper. And people look at me and they're like, wow, that's that bagpiper guy. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
you rushed out there and you hoarded the goods. And I feel like, I don't know. I feel like I'm just babbling, but also I think I'm also telling the truth.
Yeah, that rings true for me. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
If that's all you care about, then good for you. But the problem is, it's going to be a pretty empty result at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, well, I have all this stuff, and those 4 people over there, they know me as Bagpiper Andrew, but I don't sound good when I play. Kind of know that I skipped all of the important stuff, and so now what? Now I only break the pipes out when I have the chance to rip off a client who wants to hire me.
Yeah.
But besides that, there's nothing really there for me to do.
It does make me think of the idea that's come up a couple times in our conversations of falling in love with the problems, enjoy the journey, that kind of thing, right?
Imagine if you played basketball like that. I'm just going to learn how to do a couple quick dribbles and dribble through my legs and around my back. And then, I don't know. Do you remember Rain Man from Along Came Polly?
Oh, yeah, Rain Man, absolutely.
Philip Seymour Hoffman's most incredible role of his entire career. Rain Man kind of was the basketball example of what we're talking about. Philip Seymour Hoffman's role in that movie was pure comedic genius. Anyways, yeah, maybe the reason I think it's disproportionately hilarious is that we all know a lot of bagpipers like that.
I had never made that connection before. That is interesting.
Rain Man. He's just not very good at basketball. He's very enthusiastic about looking the part.
That's so funny, dude. I was thinking, who is
well,
that?
Rain Man was Dustin Hoffman, the real
Dustin
Rain
Hoffman, yeah. I was thinking of a very different movie. So I was like, yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, Dustin Hoffman was the real Rain Man, which is also a great movie, but not particularly related to this topic.
Yeah, I mean, he could really quickly count toothpicks, right? So
yes,
he really could.
He probably benefited from focusing on one thing at a time.
I was thinking that, yeah.
Yep.
Super duper focused on one thing at a time, actually.
Maybe a little too focused.
That's kind of the nuancing thing, though, that I wanted to ask you about, Andrew, is this a little bit like the go ahead and practice, but then have your dessert kind of thing? Like, do we focus on one thing at a time purposefully, but we can't do that forever? Like, at some point, we got to kind of spread our focus out a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. Well, and you might want to. And then do we have to? I'm not quite sure. I think that's where unconscious competence is, where it plays such an important role. Yeah. It's like when we're playing our pipes at any given time, if you look at Finding Bagpipe Freedom in there, that we've got those 10 really difficult skills that we're supposed to juggle simultaneously. So the question is, are we ever really juggling, or are we getting these things to a state of unconscious competence where they're happening without us having to explicitly focus on them? Which leads to the next question. At any time, how many things can I focus on? There's probably not that many. So we're talking about skill building to the point where our conscious minds don't have to think about it anymore. Because as we know, doing more than one thing at a time is not going to go well.
Maybe this is the silliest thing in the world for me to say, Andrew, but it comes to mind. It's not uncommon that jugglers are also plate spinners. I wonder if there's something in this analogy where it's like juggling, you might be focusing on everything that's in the air all at once. But with plate spinning, you focus on one plate, make sure it's going, and then you shift your focus from that one to a different plate, make sure it's going, and you can take your focus in little circles where you're focusing on one plate at a time. Maybe that's what we're going for, where if I can focus in on my blowing, I can focus in on my fingers, I can choose the thing I want to focus in on, and the rest of the plates will keep spinning in the meantime.
Yes.
I love playing the analogy game.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I wouldn't be surprised if juggling is a particularly singularly focused thing.
Yeah.
Now we'd have to talk to like a real true expert juggler to learn more.
I'm adding that to our list of future guests. Find
Yeah.
an expert juggler to come on the show.
Yeah, that would be cool. By the way, well,
Don't tell me you know an expert juggler. Do you know a professional juggler?
No, I don't. We'll just leave it there to protect the privacy of our.
Got some bad blood with a juggler over there in New York.
Bad blood with a juggler. Got into some trouble a few years back.
Mom always said, don't get mixed up with the jugglers.
The jugglers, you got to watch out. Where was I going with this? I wouldn't be surprised if it was an extremely singularly focused thing, even though it appears to us to be like they're doing 11 things. I think it's probably a sequencing thing, right? And you have to be able to focus on your sequencing and the relationship and what's coming next, and to be able to shift your focus in the right way. I doubt that you're actually following all the balls you're juggling. I think you're probably following a certain process.
Man, wouldn't that be the most interesting in the world? Because we use that analogy so often in life when you feel like you're scattered and taking care of a bunch of stuff. We say you're juggling a bunch of stuff.
Right. Well, the whole point of today's episode could be summed up as don't try and juggle multiple balls.
Yeah.
But
then what if we actually talk to an expert juggler who actually knows what they're talking about? They're like, you know what? Juggling is the most singularly focused thing that you could ever possibly do.
Right. I have a funny feeling it probably is that.
Interesting. That is fun to think about.
Because it all is. Can you think of anything that's not?
Like anything that you do to a high degree of proficiency?
Yeah, think of anything that you do to a high degree of proficiency that requires actual multitasking.
Yeah, it does seem like it's all about getting it down to where you can focus on just one thing.
Like, I think when airplane pilots are in an emergency, if you're in an emergency and you got to use your emergency checklists, like thing number one that's more important than any checklist is to just fly the plane, right? So it's like they're telling you need to keep your focus on flying the plane. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's related or not. Jim, we should wrap this episode up. People get the point.
Having started without a segue, and now we're kind of petering out at the end, aren't we?
Coffee is so important.
Now we know what happens when we get a starving and coffee-free Andrew Douglas in the morning. Well, look, I haven't been much help myself, Andrew, and I don't have any excuse.
It's okay. It was good. I think we kind of were scraping at something important there. Did we deliver? Who knows? I think people just tune in because they think we're cool, Jim.
And handsome.
And handsome.
It's the eye candy. Well, how about this? If anybody listening right now knows the point that we were trying to get at, put it in the comments.
Put it in the comments. Help us out.
Yeah.
Hey everybody, Andrew Douglas here from the Piper's Dojo, and I just want to say thanks so much for listening to today's iteration of the podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard here today, it would be super helpful to us and to a lot of bagpipers out there trying to find us. If you could give us a top-notch review on whatever platform you're using to listen to this podcast, particularly Apple, iTunes, and Spotify and things like that, your review would be really, really helpful. So if you have a moment today, definitely go over there and help us out. Other than that, until we meet again on the podcast or somewhere else, thanks again for listening.